this. It got the best of both worlds.
Oh, you want to do that one?
I know.
Eddie, rest in peace.
Oh, love it.
Dude, you should check out his son's tunes. He released 4. They're pretty damn good. Yeah, and he has this one called Distance. Man, every single time I hear it, I start crying like a baby. I don't know why. I cannot stop. And so I stopped listening to it because I'm like sitting in my office like bawling like a little infant. No, I'm serious. I'm not joking. I don't know why. Huh?
Where did he post the songs to?
Oh, just look it up on YouTube. He's been on Jimmy Kimmel. Yeah, Wolfie's a serious musician, man. Well, I mean, geez, he was in Van Halen. He was a bass player for Van Halen.
I got to, I saw Van Halen. So when Diamond Dave came back to Van Halen, I saw them play in Tulsa, Oklahoma, of all places, at the BOK Center, and Wolfie was playing there, and Diamond Dave was back. I'd say Dave, I would say he had maybe 4 or 5 songs in him before it was just like he's done.
Hey, look, you know what? I mean, they were absolutely outrageous in their prime.
Absolutely.
I mean, the dude is like 65. You got to give him a break, and he's still doing his kung fu moves. You know, he whips out the swords, and he's doing his thing.
No, exactly. You're right. I remember seeing him when I was a kid. In the '80s in high school and stuff like that. Well, doing the splits on stage and crazy shit like that, which was awesome. But it was great to see him again over the years. And then when Dave came back, I think it was I want to say 2012. Maybe I saw him in Tulsa. But Eddie never changed. He was flawless the whole time.
He actually got better. He got more disciplined in his playing and more consistent. And before, he'd be running around stage and probably was drunk, and he'll admit that. And sometimes he'd be sloppy, but his sloppy is incredible compared to anybody else. It's like, holy crap. How do you do that with like a cigarette dangling out of your mouth,
We can all wish that.
And then running around stage like that.
We could all wish that in our careers and our professions that we could be that sloppy and be head and shoulders above everyone else when we're phoning it in.
And then that first album, I've been listening to it more and more lately. It just blows your mind. Not just because, actually I've been starting to learn their songs because I never really learned the first album, but the tunes are pretty simple, but just incredibly deep and cerebral in their simplicity. Like some of the stuff that he plays, you just go, wow. How old was he? He was like 20 something, and he's doing. Anyways,
I mean, you're right. Back in the 70s, they were opener for Kiss.
Yeah.
Of course, who else was an opener for Kiss in the 70s? Rush.
Yeah.
There's a pattern there of. Yeah. We are the Padawan, and now we, it's like they blew past Kiss, both of them.
David's going, what the hell are you guys talking about?
Well, you know what I was doing? I opened another screen, and I Google the Wikipedia Eddie Van Halen, so I can see. And the only 2 things that I knew about the guy is one, that he was Dutch, and 2, and I had to look it up in the article. I have a friend of mine who's a musician who has an Eddie Van Halen Fender amplifier.
Oh,
yeah, they're awesome.
Apparently, there was a branded thing that he did. So those 2 things I know. Everything else, I'm just listening to you two going about it.
Awesome.
But I am going to go and check out this guitar tapping thing, which I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
But apparently his is number 2 in one of the 100 greatest guitar solos. And I like music, so I'm going to listen to this after we're done.
Do you watch Rick Beato's YouTube channel?
No.
Why is this song great and all this stuff? That's like the best thing on YouTube.
Yeah.
Actually.
Why is this song
if
great?
You're into music. Yeah.
Check it out.
The guy can play any instrument, and he'll sit there and he'll play all these songs. He'll do like top 10 songs where the song started with the guitar, top 10 songs, whatever, and then he does why is this song great? Why was the song a hit? And he'll play every instrument on the song and tell you the hooks and why people thought it was awesome.
Yeah,
that's a great one to watch. Like,
check it out.
You know what? As they used to say, who said it? Was it Pioneer or Maxell tapes? Because the music matters.
Oh my God. Dude, you are so old school. How do you even remember all this stuff? I was there. When these things came out. I just don't remember them as well as you.
I only remember things that are truly important, and it turns out music and stuff like that was more important than maybe some of the stuff we do day to day now.
No, you're just old, just like me.
Yeah. Yes, I'm old school because I'm old.
Yeah.
Well, you just said Maxell tapes. I now thinking about it, I think this is, even in IoT context, I know we talk about the quality of the data, the quality of the work before, modeling that data, which is going to, impact the quality of the output. But I think hearing Rob said, the word tapes and me thinking cassette tapes, I think that was one of my earliest experiences with quality, because there was TDK and Maxell, and then there was that other stuff. And I could tell the difference after hitting, play record and it's like, man, you got to buy TDK or Sony or Maxell or these other brands, because you can tell the audio quality from the crappy ones that you got at a discount. But that's all my paper route could afford.
Think about the stuff but you know what? This is important stuff. Yeah. Which tape brands am I going? And then remember the chromium dioxide versus metal tape.
Oh my
wars, God. Or Dolby B or Dolby C versus DBX wars. We just made them wars. Maybe they weren't, but they are now. Damn it. All that stuff mattered because what were they trying to accomplish when we moved to cassette tapes? It's smaller, it's not as wide, there's not as many, you know what I mean, compared to reel and all that stuff. And they were like, how do we try to capture that same fidelity that we had with the big reel to reel? And so people were bending over backwards with different tape types and different compression types and things like that. I personally am going with DBX, but it got Betamax by Dolby. I thought DBX was better. But it didn't get enough traction broadly. So what are you going to do?
Amazing. Well, this week we're going to be talking about Rob Tiffany saves IoT.
Woo!
Yeah.
Save it, Rob. Save it.
Maybe. Yeah.
Does anybody know that it needs saving? Maybe they.
No, you know what? I think there's an increasing number of people who believe that IoT does need to be saved.
Okay.
And we're not just a bunch of grouchy guys. It just happens that we're just calling the BS, and we're also trying to help firms figure out how to survive, number one, during the pandemic, because it was really tough. But more importantly, how do they tune into what's really valuable, which is not up here, but it's somewhere down here?
Right.
And then how do you get to work to mine that value? Because there's not that much gold. There's some gold, and there's going to be a few people who survive and a bunch that don't. I mean, it's just a sad reality. I mean, I wish I could say otherwise, but
no, you're right. I guess letting our audience know we're not just some talking heads pontificating about the state of this market. We're actually players, and we're actually building stuff, and we're actually going to try to rescue the entire IoT ecosystem. I know that sounds like a tall order, but we're going to make that bitch happen. Absolutely.
We can do it.
You're doing it, dude.
So let's start with a premise, because first you have to realize or believe that it needs saving, right? We've been doing IoT now. Well, we've been doing telemetry and stuff like that for decades, right? But let's just say, for argument's sake, that the IoT kind of hype megatrend started in the last decade, maybe 2010, 2011, 2012, whatever. You know, our good pal Rick Bellana did ThingWorks probably, you know, back in 2010, you know, and then ultimately sold that to PTC, and ThingWorks was probably the first big IoT platform that people are like, whoa, what is this? And it got everybody else on that train as well. So along the way, lots of analysts been saying stuff. Lots of
I remember I was a consultant too, so
yeah,
advising, doing the strategy stuff, building stuff. So
yeah, so
not like you guys, but you know, I've gotten my hands dirty. So
yeah, and so if you'll go back to 2010, all of a sudden you started, you know, trust me, I know most everything in life is about marketing and trying to get people to buy things they maybe don't want to buy. And so we had the smartphone mega trend, which was arguably the biggest thing ever. And the iPhone is the single most valuable, successful product in the history of products. There's no other product that's $1 trillion product. The iPhone is singularly successful in that way. Well, the technology industry needed, what's the next thing after that? We need to sell stuff to customers. We need to tell them that they need to do something. God, I sound jaded. So IoT was the next thing. And so IoT was this perfect storm. We've got lots of connectivity now with wireless and cellular and Ethernet and a million different ways to connect. And that seemed semi-ubiquitous. Sorry, people on farms and rural parts of the country. My bad. And then you had devices getting cheaper, microcontrollers getting cheaper, sensors getting cheaper, things like that. People could buy it online. Storage, especially in this new cloud thing that was starting, the price of storage was going like this, right? At least in the cloud. And then advanced analytics technologies, which typically were only the domain of giant governments and big companies. Now you could go to apache.org and download anything you wanted for free. You had to know how to use it, of course, but all of a sudden you can see that kind of that playing field get democratized and flattened, and now everybody can participate. And so that's what I think about when IoT really started taking off. So that's happening. And so everybody, analysts, companies, McKinsey, I think they said 11 trillion, you know, Gartner had their number, IDC had their number, Forrester had their number, Ericsson, where I work, had their 50 billion number, GE chimed in with the 50 billion number, so did others. Guess what happened? We were all wrong.
Are you sure? I
yes.
thought it's like a gajillion, not just a billion.
Yeah. Well, if you're in marketing or you're pitching a customer, you would say a cajillion.
Okay.
Yes, but it's actually probably around 9 billion is where we're at, which is not bad, but it's a fraction of where we predicted we'd be. And so, and how many 7 trillion zettabytes of data and all that kind of discussion.
Yeah.
Right?
By the way, that's such a terrible metric for sizing the success of
I agree.
or failure of IoT, by the way.
I agree.
It's just really bad.
So, you know, some of us had a front row seat to this whole thing. And so we were consultants, we were developers, we were inventors of this technology, and we got to see customers use it, and we got to see what worked and what didn't work. And along the way, we noticed that it's just too damn complex. It's not like the smartphone and me learning how to build an app where one person could go become a millionaire in the app store. What it was, it's a consulting gig is what IoT is actually. It's, you know, obviously a lot of platforms try to pitch that it's do it yourself, customer could do yourself, but more times than not, it's a global SI probably coming to do the gig for you. And so it requires a lot of different skill sets, right? Domains, you know, embedded developer could be knowing about cellular modules, knowing about networks, knowing about these little devices, knowing about clouds, platforms, knowing about streaming analytics, knowing about batch analytics, a whole lot of different things, right? Security along the way. And so it's it's a tall order. And so that complexity slowed this mega trend for obvious reasons. It was just hard, right? It requires a lot of skills. A lot of times one person wouldn't have all those skills, right? And so the customer would read the pamphlet on the airplane, IoT, take cost out of your business, save money, uptime for machines, high availability, no downtime, fix it before it fails, predictive maintenance, blah, blah, blah. I want that. Or safety for your employees, whatever it is. And they said, I want that. And they hired consulting firms or whoever to come do this IoT project for them to do that. And then 3 years later, they're noticing all those consultants are burning billable hours programming devices and configuring devices and configuring networks and configuring cloud platforms or otherwise. And they're like, what the hell's going on? I asked you to give me this value thing. Where's the app? Where's the outcome? Where's the analytics? Oh, so sorry.
Where's the smartphone?
Yeah. Where's my smartphone? Where's my iPhone? I want my MTV. And but instead, what they got was years of billable hours doing non-valuable activities, stuff you have to do. Sometimes you have to do the boring stuff before you get to the good stuff.
Experiments. They're experiments.
A lot of science projects out there.
And also OJT, on-the-job training.
Oh, yes. We're paying you senior consultant bill rates for OJT, aren't we?
Been there, done that.
Oh, yeah.
I know the game.
So we get to a point where we're starting to notice, and we start getting this data about the success of these IoT projects coming from Microsoft, coming from Cisco, coming from a lot of places, actually, where they're going, wow, right now, we're pretty firm that over 75% of all IoT projects are failing at the POC phase, at the proof of concept phase. They're not making it to production. Yeah. And that really sucks. I hear about the manager who was in charge of the project ultimately being fired, never surviving to the end of the project. A lot of times, some companies were trying to boil the ocean, and it was almost a board level decision to do mega IoT across the company. And people got their heads chopped off in a bad way. Which is why we always said, hey, no, start small, do some little thing, get some value. But I remember early on, people, and gosh, they were saying at Microsoft, this is a board level decision. We're going to boil your whole company. Boil your whole company. Because we're going to, because IoT is one of the primary things that underpins things like digital transformation or Industry 4.0, right? And so it's a big, big thing. So anyway, there's that happening. And then if it wasn't bad enough that you had all this complexity that slowed the headwinds, you had this other punch. So the 1-2 punch was security. It turns out we accidentally created the largest attack surface in the history of computing by doing IoT. All these devices exposed on the internet, people really not knowing what they're doing. And we got hit really hard a few years ago by this thing called the Mirai botnet. And it hijacked millions of IoT devices. And it took down large portions of the internet, including an African country.
I like to think that we enabled DDoS.
Yeah.
That's how I would pitch it. That's how I would pitch it.
And so all this IoT people are like, my bad. Sorry about that. And so we've got, and now you're starting to get legislation, about and trying to come up with a minimum deal, a list of what devices, because devices have turned out to be the weak link over and over again in these data streams. And so anyway, so let's just say that the 1-2 punch is complexity and security is holding back this mega trend. That's why we're at a fraction of the devices we thought we'd be at, whether or not you believe that's a valuable metric, and maybe it's not. And so I've decided to take it upon myself to rescue the entire IoT ecosystem from complexity and security threats. And so I'm going to save the whole thing with my friends. So
you in a flying Rob with a cape. Just
yes.
Yes.
Save us.
So in order to save us, I need to my main goal was let's get rid of that complexity. Let's get to value. Customers want to get to value fast, right? So here's what happens, folks, for all you kids watching at home. IoT, part of it is provisioning devices, the endpoint, and it could be a simple device, a simple sensor, could be an industrial machine. You may have to adapt to it. You may have to talk to it through a PLC. Who knows? There's a lot of ways you have to do with this stuff. The problem is when you're writing code and you're configuring stuff to talk to make these machines talk. That's what IoT is machines, sensors, environmental systems. They're talking to us now. Instead of me looking at a gauge and writing it down on a clipboard and typing it into a computer system later, the machine's going to tell us and it's going to do it for us, right? So huge amount of time is being spent doing that. And also when you're programming for a device, you're using an SDK. That stands for Software Developer Kit. And the SDK is for one of these IoT platforms. Could be Azure IoT, could be ThingWorx, could be AWS, could be Lumada from Hitachi. And you write it for SDK, and that permanently ties you to that platform forever. It really does. Even if you had device management to update configuration, the code you're writing is so specific, you're tied to that platform forever. So you're writing code for the SDK, and now you're connected to that platform. Hope you pick the right one because you're stuck with them. You're married. And so that's what I'll work. So what I want to do is I'm going to first, and all these SDKs are all different from each other and varying levels of complexity and how they work and how they handle security and wire protocols and stuff like that. So step one for me is I'm creating a universal device SDK that is Forrest Gump simple. Hey, Jenny. And it's going to be just stupid, easy, simple, single wire protocol. But the takeaway here is that when you use the universal device SDK, it guarantees you as a device maker and OEM that you'll be able to talk to any backend IoT platform, that you will not be tied to one. So now you go, oh, I have flexibility. This is great. A lot of OEMs, while they know that they pre-baked in millions of microcontrollers and things with an SDK, that would streamline things, right? And there's a few of the big IoT platform players like Microsoft and Amazon that have this bulk provisioning capability, obviously. But you're tied to them forever. So I hope you pick the right one. So I'm going to have bulk provisioning the same way, except when you bulk provision the Rob Tiffany way, you'll be able to connect to anything at any time. So it's easier, and it's the same. Part of streamlining a manufacturing process of any kind is making sure you're doing the same thing over and over again, and not different things each time. That's how you get to economies of scale. So same way to configure every device, knowing you'll get to connect to anybody. Mucho value, right? Also, what's the other part? The platform itself. So that's the kind of the client side. The server side is configuring the customer with a particular platform, getting them all registered and everything. And there's this notion of registering devices on all these platforms. And so it is kind of like a registration, and you'll get an identity and some kind of security token or key or certificate, and you'll choose a wire protocol. It could be REST, could be MQTT, it could be whatever. What if I could just fully automate all that shit? Well, that's what I'm going to do. So we're going to automate all that hard work too. So you don't have to have that skill set anymore. So streamline device provisioning, any device going to any platform. And so we're taking away a whole lot of what I consider non-valuable activities from the project, right?
Yep.
So now you can get to focus on the stuff that really matters, the customer matters. Along the way, if I can register you automatically with platform A, it also means I can unregister you from that platform and re-register you with platform B. Yay. So this is extra love for all you companies with a multi-cloud strategy or don't like vendor lock-in. I know all the analysts are telling everybody, don't be locked into a vendor. And you know what? That's what I did when we designed Lumada with Hitachi. We made sure it was portable across clouds. So this is going to help you. This is going to facilitate that for all you folks who have that strategy. You're probably talking about it, but you actually don't know how you make that happen. Sounds like a whole lot of work. Well, no, we're going to do it with a button click. Pull you out of one platform, send you to another. Oh, if you want to hedge your bets and send telemetry to two platforms at the same time, we got you. So we can do that too. So I'm going to facilitate that as well. So multi-platform, no lock-in, get to market faster. What's the last thing? Security, right? So there's a lot you can do with security, and we talk till we're blue in the face, telling people, I need you to secure your devices. I need you to do this, but I can't always count on them to do the right thing. So using the SDK is going to help, but I'm going to enforce a lot of just basics. I'm going to enforce TLS 1.2. Obviously, I'm following this. If you've followed security in the last few years, you hear this term called zero trust. We don't trust anything anywhere. There's no more, oh, you made it through the castle walls and now you're good. You're never good. And so the devices will, they'll authenticate themselves at every hop, right? Their identity and their security token. Well, since I'm going to be controlling all the data streams from each individual device going to whatever platform, I'm going to apply security policies to every individual stream. So there's a lot of great security technologies out there on the network, and they do it kind of broadly, looking for anomalies or policies for how the network's configured and things like that. I'm going to do this to individual data streams flowing from one device through my system onto a destination, a data destination. And keep in mind too, this data destination, we're starting out with IoT platforms, but it could be an S3 bucket in AWS, could be whatever, right? It could be an on-prem system, it's just time, right? We'll have this universal device connector that works with particular SDKs to start building those connectors over time, to go from any to any, that kind of thing. So securing your data streams, and there's a lot of simple things you can do right out of the box when you're securing data streams when it's flowing. So imagine I'm going to have this, it's like a data broker flowing through me, but it's running on a hyperscale cloud across cloud data centers, multiple ones, to ensure availability, right? Primary, secondary, failover, that kind of thing. From devices, when they send telemetry, they will have a primary and secondary. When it goes through my system running in the clouds, that when it talks to a backend system, that will again have primary and secondaries. If that destination system is down or the network's down, there'll always be a backup to flow data to. Or if there's nothing, we'll cache and save that data locally for you, right? In our own historian there. And when the things come back to life, we'll replay that, right? And flow that telemetry onto its destination. Because data availability is kind of part of security too, right?
Yeah.
And it's critical for enterprises to have that kind of stuff going.
Rob, so I'm going to role play, and I'm going to role play as please. The SVP of janitorial services. I used to be SVP of strategy, but then I bought a really expensive IoT thing that just tanked. So I decided to promote myself into something else. Abandon the problem.
Yes.
So couple of questions, because I can feel the audience listening to this and rolling their eyes really hard. So first question, at the top of you saving the IoT, you said that you just can connect all these things. Can you define connect anything? Or better yet, did you define the stuff that cannot be connected so that we don't even start that conversation? What do you mean?
Adapter.
Yes.
The universal adapter.
Yes. Yeah, exactly right. It's the universal adapter. Didn't you see the ad from IBM 10 years ago where they had some weird thing? The guy threw it out on the table. It's that. It's that. Okay. So it's software. So obviously you have to use my universal SDK because it means you're going to flow through my data broker running in these hyperscale clouds. It means you have to just trust, right?
Fair enough.
Couldn't be a little startup. It has to be a giant mega company that's already proven to manage people's data going globally. So that's what we're going to do.
Fair.
But to your point, you're an industrial guy working at your janitorial thing. And you know that I can't use Rob's universal device SDK on this giant old machine that's 40 years old. So machine is going to talk to Edge Gateway or PLC. You'll put the universal device SDK on your edge devices. So if you can't put it on the real thing, put it on the edge device. Your edge device, is like, hello. And it's talking through serial ports, RS-232 and stuff like that to Modbus and OPC and all that stuff.
I'm so glad you opened that up because I couldn't tell how far from the camera it was. And I thought it was like my mom's makeup thing. And it's okay if you put makeup, but that's what I thought it was. But no, it's ear thingies.
They're ear thingies.
Question number 2.
Hey, you know what? I'm giving love to Samsung at the same time as we give love to Apple.
David, I'll tell you right now, other YouTubers, they wear makeup.
Oh, I'm not knocking makeup, mate. No. Let's be clear. I thought it was a makeup thing. I'm not knocking makeup.
Yeah.
Rob's a beautiful guy with or without it. It's
You're not wearing makeup. I'm not wearing makeup.
Because makeup doesn't help this. That's why. So I just leave it natural.
I was about to say the same thing. Makeup can't help this either.
It'll be a waste of money. It will be like investing, senior developer money for the C squad. Yes. Second question, Rob.
Yes.
So, can you walk me through? I love the automation and provisioning across the stack, in your Save the IoT plan. But how do you effectively do that when on one side, you're not the OEM of the devices, but I think you're going to answer this through your super trusty SDK, and that's okay. But how about the automation on the platform side? Because I love the pitch. I don't have to do vendor lock-in, but how are you going to automate, platform A versus platform B when you're not the owner of that platform? How do you do that?
I am so glad you asked that question. So on the device side,
I'm writing them down.
No, this is good. This is good because people shouldn't just blindly trust whatever's coming out of my mouth. That's why you guys are on the call here. Just be like, boom, choom, 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 choom. So on the device side, we know that currently IoT is like an aftermarket car stereo shop. Devices are being created and they're not provisioned for anything. It's an empty device. And so SIs, customers, developers, they are having to write code on that device to bring it to life, to map to the sensors and actuators, pull that together, maybe it's JSON, serialize that over the wire, send whatever. That's what's really happening today. So I want to speed that up and standardize it and just have one way to do it. So I'm not eliminating the task, but I'm going to make it identical and also know that you'll be able to. So if I'm doing the aftermarket thing, at least you'll tell. If you're a consulting firm and you're developers, it's like you only have to know how to do this one thing, which means you can do it faster and we can probably find a way to image and automate the hell out of it, right? Because you'll connect to this. Like if I think of those as data provisioners. I think of IoT platforms over here. I think of the enterprise customer who is our customer that we care about, right? And so the provisioners are going to do their thing. So if it's an OEM, they're going to register with this system as an organization. And they're like, yes, I'm a device provisioner and I need to provision one device, or I need to pre-provision 1 million devices. Push a button. If it's 1 million devices, I'm going to spit out maybe a CSV file or something for you that's going to have 1 million identities and security tokens and 2 URLs in it as well. And then you're going to, in manufacturing, when you're pre-baking all that stuff into your machines in Shenzhen, you're going to do that. And that's how we get to those big numbers too, right? Is when it's done at time of manufacturing instead of the car stereo thing. So that's the perfect method, because here's the narrative. Here's the storytelling part. I pre-provision these devices. I'm a manufacturer in China, and they're all pre-baked in. And all the devices, they all have a unique identifier, the security token, and a URL. What's all that about? When the customer buys that machine and that machine is turned on the very first time, first it needs a dumb pipe. Did I say that? It needs a pipe. It could be a
single-use pipe, a single KPI pipe. Yes. It does one thing very well.
It does one thing very well. So they need that pipe. That could be cellular, it could be Wi-Fi, it could be whatever, Ethernet. So the first they need the pipe. And if they're using some connection management system by Ericsson or Verizon or somebody else or Vodafone or Jasper, then that will automatically happen, which takes away some of the friction, right? Because normally a person would be having to configure the network stuff, especially if it's Wi-Fi. Good luck figuring out what SSID and stuff does. I don't even know what the customer's using, right? That makes it tough. So it's easier certainly with cellular because we can make that automagic. The next part though is now that the pipe is created, the device, it launches. And so you have the life cycle of your app. And so in that launch phase, it goes, I'm awake. And my first task is to call a URL, a globally accessible URL that I can see from anywhere on the planet. That's my thing. They're going to call out to it. They're going to pass along the credentials that were given to it initially when you pre-provisioned all those devices. It's going to talk to my system and I'm going to go, oh yeah, I know who you are, or no, I don't know who you are, and you're out of here. But if I do know who you are, then I'm going to do my own internal lookups, and I go, oh, I see that you were purchased by XYZ customer in France, and this customer bought it from this company in China. Oh, and I see this customer is using ThingWorx or Azure IoT Hub or Lumada or GE Predix, whatever. Great. I am now going to use that lookup information, and I'm now going to connect with that customer's data destination, what they are using. So let's just say it's Azure IoT Hub for sake, argument's sake. I'm going to connect to it. Now, this is the other part you asked. All of those platforms, you know what they all have? They have REST APIs that let me programmatically automate the registration of customers. If the customer may already be registered with them, which makes life easier, but I'll automate the registration of the customer and that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to automate the registering of 1 million devices or whatever it happens to be. And as I do that registration, those platforms are going to give me what they think is the unique identifier for that device, how they do security, which could be different than how I do it, their wire protocol, which could be different than my wire protocol. They're going to give me all that information. And so on my platform, my universal platform connector combined with the SDKs for all those destination platforms, the same SDK actually that you use on the device if you're programming it, except I'm going to have it on a kind of like a server-ish platform, right, in the cloud. And so I will have that. And so those REST APIs and the credentials I'm given by the customer are going to allow me to fully automate those processes. Because you're right, normally you would go into the Azure portal and you would be typing around and clicking stuff and configuring that stuff. I'm going to fully automate and programmatically do that with REST APIs. So that's how that's going to work.
So so it's funny as you were describing data connections, looking for a profile of a device or a machine to do what it's supposed to. I totally went. This is how Stuxnet got into those PLCs. This is exactly how the payload was delivered. But I digress. I'm going to ask the Leonard Dinero question. So now that we understand, connect anything. You're democratizing things, you're automating, you're making stuff easier, you're saving the IoT. How are you making money off from this? Are you going to take a piece from the device OEMs that you made this easy to? Are you going to do some sort of hey, platform people on the right side, like pay me per API call? So that's a question for you, Rob. And right after Leonard, I've got one for you. I just become the chief interviewer officer.
Oh, gee. Yeah.
Well, right. What Rob's describing, how would you, this is what I want you to take a kick at, Leonard, is if a small company that we haven't heard of that it's doing a SPAC because no one's doing IPOs anymore, like what to look for to see if you can do it with this small company because it might be cheaper versus doing with a super big brand that we all know and love that's been around for 98 years, but it might be more expensive. So those are my questions back to you guys. So how do you make money?
You wanted to know the business model.
Yeah.
So it's a work in progress. It's a kind of a SaaS offering, as you can imagine, because that's what we do. You know what? It could be a number of things. It could be charged by the message so for instance, here's something that people who are in the IoT space today are already familiar with. They know if they're talking to AWS IoT Core or Azure IoT Hub, there might be being charged a certain amount of money per million messages flowing through their system. And that's a possibility. I'm going to be super transparent and say, I'm still working on the business model. It could be that. It could be by connection to backend platform. There are ETL type tools in the space where they charge by connectors per year, that kind of thing. I'm looking at that. There's a bigger thing I'm looking at in the future of building a marketplace around the whole ecosystem. But that's something will evolve over time. And what I'm getting at there is, as I have device provisioners and OEMs and everything on this side and more platform players on this side and SIs who are trained on doing this stuff fast, you can imagine a website where I pull all these people together, because the other problem we have that customers, the enterprise customer has, is this complexity. They don't know who to call or where to start or how to make all that happen. If we can make that also easy and pull all these people together, it's possible. I have talked to, I'm not going to name names, but I've talked to players on both sides, on the device side and the platform side, that have told me, oh, I'd be willing to pay you to be a part of this. And I'm like, really? Well, think about it. It's, companies talk about how they customer acquisition costs comes out of marketing budget. I know a lot of people out there don't realize this. We actually buy customers in this world. We just do. There's funding that does that, because they're like saying, oh, all of a sudden, I'm not a big famous IoT platform player. Maybe I'm a tier 2 player and nobody knows me, but because of your system, I'm now famous, or I'm now getting equal footing with the big guys. I love that. And yeah. And so those discussions are happening. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I'm saying I've had those discussions where people are saying, wow, I'd pay you to be part of this ecosystem that you're creating, because you're going to send customers to me that I wouldn't have otherwise gotten. Remember, the other part I haven't talked about much, though, when you talk about the value prop and what are you paying for? Because you could imagine some customers saying, well, I'm already paying to go to AWS or Azure. Why should I pay you extra to do that? And so what are you paying for? And so you're paying for get to market faster. What are we trying to do? We're trying to blow up that whole 75% failure rate in POCs. We want people to get to production and get the value that they're trying to do, right? So you're paying for that. You're paying for speed. You're paying for security. We're going to give you this whole hiding inside this product, and it grew over time, is there's a security product hiding inside it, and it's growing. Again, kind of unintended consequences, kind of like being able to break cloud lock-in. You're paying for the ability to have flexibility. And that's another part where to answer your question on the business model, we will charge when you're a customer, an enterprise customer or whoever, or if a SI is managing the whole thing for you, if you choose to move from one platform to another, we'll charge you for that. So maybe a per device charge to move you from one platform to another. So that's another place where we can make money there. But you're also, the other reason you're paying is you're getting a heightened level of security. And it's not security that happens when Stuxnet or the DDoS attack makes it to your platform, either on-prem in your data center or in your cloud. Because no doubt about it, some of these IoT platforms, they have some security stuff built into them because they're concerned about it. I would make the case that sometimes it's too late. If the bad guy has already made it to your house and they're beating on your door right there, it might be too late, especially if it's a DDoS attack, right? Denial of service attack, for all you folks who don't know what that is. So imagine a system that's on the network way down range, away from your critical infrastructure as an enterprise customer. We're going to take care of that fire hose of attacks and turn that off thousands of miles away from where your critical infrastructure is. And so, we'll check for the easy stuff, and we'll just, over time, we'll add security policies. It's something that's going to grow over time, just like a marketplace could grow over time. You don't make a marketplace overnight. It evolves over time, right? As people start to participate. So security policies, day one, it's stupid, simple security policies. Oh, I expect this device to be sending me telemetry once per hour, 24 times a day. Gee, if it starts sending me telemetry 10,000 times a day, maybe there's a problem there. It didn't
password 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, it didn't require AI inferencing or anything like that. It's called Forrest Gump. I think you're supposed to send me this. Or here's another simple policy. I expect this device to send me 2K worth of data every time they send me telemetry. If it starts sending me 1 gigabyte of data every time, could be a problem. And being able to have rules, just simple rules at this network level, way far away from your platform, to say, if data payload too big, frequency too high, disable device, right? And shut it down and blacklist the device. And And of course, this system that's downrange is wrapped in a firewall. It's encrypted storage, it's encrypted data in transit, it's authenticating stuff every step of the way. It's got this whole loosely coupled system inside it, which is really geeky, that makes it work. It's ensuring availability to go to platform B if platform A is not up, or it's caching data. Here's another part of the business model. If your platform, your destination is down and I store your data for you, then I'll charge for that, right? Just in the same way, you know, kind of competitive rates like what people are paying to store things like in an S3 bucket or Azure Blob Storage, right? So something like that, that's another way to make money as well. Also, let's say you're a customer and you haven't decided on your data destination yet, but you want your devices to start sending telemetry right now. We can do that. And they can send it and it could just stop with us and we'll store that data and organize it for you and have APIs where customers can suck that data out. And then at some point they could choose to have it be routed to another destination or whatever. And so
that's hedging your bets comment that you made earlier too.
Yeah, totally. Lots of hedging, huh?
But you know, there is a recent example on bet hedging that comes to mind, and it was either Daimler or some factory in Germany. It was either Daimler or the CDG airport outside of because it's not in Paris, it's in Roissy, people. That's north. But anyway,
I've often stayed at the Hyatt right there when I have an early flight, or I've stayed at the Sheraton.
Sheraton, yes, because you can look at the runway,
and it looks like a ship. Yes,
and you don't want to miss it because then you have to go around twice. I speak from experience, but you know, it's some people might not realize that they are customers effectively hedging the bet. So the example that comes to mind from what I've read is that people are an enterprise. Again, in this case, the airport or the factory, they're looking at 2 private network deployments in separate sides of the building, with the idea that we're going to test, you know, this vendor and this vendor on an identical use case, and let's just pick the best outcome out of the 2. So there are many examples out there. Now, this is, you know, a more expensive proposition when you're talking about this kind of infrastructure versus what you described, Rob. But I think people are doing it. It's like, look, I'm embarking in this journey. How do I early on diversify? Because, you know, I'm at 0 right now. What can get me to 10 quicker?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Also, I'm a big fan. I think one of the things we also haven't realized with IoT is that level of interoperability that we thought we were going to get, where everything's mashing up and talking to and getting value from all these places. People just use new technology to build the same old stuff that they'd built 20 years ago. And so this any to any kind of idea is about making hyper interoperability real for customers. I'm a big fan. You saw me write my little Magna Carta on LinkedIn last week where I could get people shooting arrows at me about, I'm just going to use HTTP2 instead of MQTT or some other thing. I'm a big fan of when I talk about me saving the whole ecosystem, there are so many layers that goes into that. Familiarity and stuff that's widely adopted. It's not enough to be an open standard. It has to be massively ubiquitously adopted, which might mean it's not the best way to do something, but it's the most used way to do something. And the answers to all those questions are on the internet, on the web today. And so the cool thing is when we moved to HTTP2, we went from text to binary. We went from single duplex to full duplex. We went to server push. A lot of the things that we liked about MQTT and others, we start getting for free from HTTP2, which was originally called Spidey, developed by Google. And they're actually working on HTTP3 right now, which is going to be based on UDP. And so my whole thing is I'm going to use a protocol that's already 100% supported by every browser, every server, everything on the internet, and is widely used today. And I'm going to use payloads that everybody understands. I'm going to use the way of doing authentication in a way that everybody understands. There's not going to be any obscure, here's my super awesome protocol that's better than yours because I'm smarter than you are deal. Mine is the everyman, every woman protocol that works with everybody.
Let's go COBOL.
It's just weird. Isn't that weird how that works out? Is that the solution sometimes it just is not sexy, or it doesn't look sexy, or it doesn't sound sexy, but it's elegant just because you manage to tune into the thing that matters the most, because I mean, bottom line, what you're doing is what we talked about several times already is this is all middleware. You're dealing with the complexities out there today and the lack of interoperability by basically simplifying and then sort of software defining the complexity so you can manage it better, right? You can abstract it, manage it, and then you're going to have all these adapters and connectors in the back end that are completely invisible to the developer. All they know is it's an API or it's a connector, and that goes off and connects to all these various heterogeneous devices on the edge. And then on the back end, I mean, you're doing the cool thing of supporting and enabling hybrid cloud or multi-cloud, probably hybrid and multi-cloud on the other end, right?
Yeah, it can be on-prem.
Which is a whole different set of cloud brokerage, cloud orchestration, all kinds of stuff that's happening there to support that whole data brokerage thing that we talked about before we hit the record button. So, yeah, I mean, so going back to the question that you're asking, David, is like what I think. Honestly, this is the first time I'm hearing this stuff, so it's been a pleasant education on how Rob's going to save the IoT. But I mean, I think will this be more expensive just because it's a big dog's product or service? I don't think so. I think where the smaller guys really need to be a little bit afraid, because the economies of scale that this middleware platform is going to provide is going to basically take away a lot of the consulting dollars that these guys just give away for free anyways, right?
To your point, just about the consulting thing, because I totally get, I worried early on that the SIs will not like this because
they will love it.
They're not going to get all that billable hours. And so I talked to them. Remember, part of doing a startup is validation, right?
Yeah.
And so I talked to a bunch of them and I said, hey, I'm going to take away all these billable hours.
You're an influencer, Rob.
No. That's not the way they're going to look at it.
And you know what they said to me? They're like, that's awesome, because you know what? We're in it for the long haul with our customers. And all we're doing is pissing off our customers by billing the shit out of them for stuff that's not valuable. We would prefer to not have to do any of that stuff. They were totally all in. They go, short term, not getting those extra billable hours, we don't care, because the long-term relationship with the customer is way more important. And a happy customer, right, who's getting what they actually paid for, is a long-term relationship, right?
Not only that, from a people perspective, if you don't simplify stuff, that complexity of IoT at the edge, and then even on the cloud side, which is this whole multi-cloud stuff, I mean, they still don't really have the whole cloud brokerage stuff down anyways. It's sort of getting there, but it's not there yet in terms of what you're talking about, what needs to be there to completely do what you're talking about. But from a human resources perspective, it's not like these SIs have these people and are able to scale their workforce or their consulting, organization to deal with the complexity, right? Because when you think about it, when you look at complexity, that requires very specific skill sets, and that just doesn't scale in a person, And then the velocity of change that we're dealing with the IoT technology, they simply can't keep up. You have to constantly educate people, and then people end up knowing a lot of stuff but not really having experience implementing anything.
Yeah.
right? Because they're waiting on the I mean, look, I was in the consulting game for a very long time. I know how this stuff works. And yes, the SIs will be all over this. And so, yeah, that's that counterintuitive thing. You would think that you're taking away their lunch. No, you're making it so that they could go to market with IoT services that are much more scalable in the way that they're able to do it today. And so,
Leonard, I don't look. I don't disagree with you, but I think no, I don't disagree with you.
You can disagree with me. Hey, dude.
No, I don't. It's just the reason I say I agree with you is because look, the whole SI angle is very valid. But I think something that we are overlooking is that you have smaller players, and by smaller players, I mean like great platforms, but that might only have, say, 20, 35 people, most of them in engineering, but that are doing a great job positioning their value proposition. Like, hey, I do this very well. And on day one, instead of that being like a consultative thing, it's more like, I know your industry, so let me hear me talk about your industry and how we're solving these things. And then they end up getting in the consultancy like after the fact, when the customer feels like, like I really need a domain expert to come and help out.
So I'll tell you something. There's a difference between solutioning and engineering.
True.
If you mix the two up, you get confused. If you're a CEO of an IoT company and you get those mixed up, you're going to probably not survive for very long. And then you end up in these POC hells. You have a business model where you're giving away value, the solutioning value, for free. I mean, we've already talked about this stuff a million times, right? And so, what Rob's doing, I think, it's inevitable, but it is the thing that so that's the value of listening to IoT Coffee Talk, is we give you the answers before
the questions.
There's a question.
There you go.
No, seriously. No, that's why I love doing this, and why I do this every week with you guys, because there's always something that comes out. We might ramble on, like this is probably like an hour and a half long. We ramble on, but there's something that's extremely valuable that comes out of it, not only for me, and I know that would be value for my clients. It's just a matter of patience listening to us just go on.
Yeah.
But
one of the takeaways here, also, when I say rescue the whole IoT ecosystem, I really mean that. I'm not just trying to make it better for the end customer, which we are. I'm trying to lift all the boats. There's value for the semiconductor OEM. There's value for the device maker OEM. There's value for the consultants. And it's good to iterate through what the value is. If all these OEMs know that, hey, I can now take a bet on an SDK and bring my semiconductor or my fully baked device to life, knowing that I have not bet on the wrong horse potentially by picking one platform. Like, what if I had picked Predix, right? Thinking, well, Digital and Predix were going to take over the world of industrial stuff, not knowing what was going to happen, right? And so this way, I've de-risked that bet that they're making. So I de-risk for those guys. The consulting firms get to have a better relationship with the customer because they're going to actually work on the solution. The customer is going to say, oh, here's the value, the app, the analytics, the outcome I was looking for. And I'm getting that quickly. Yes, love you. We're going to hire you again. The platform players, I'm sending customers to them. I'm going to send new connections to them that they may not have gotten through their own marketing and sales efforts. So I'm going to lift their boats too. The customers will be happier. We're going to start getting the value that we had promised over a decade ago, a lot of stuff. So that I'm always thinking of every player in the ecosystem when I think about this.
But you know what? You don't even have to think about this as being just a SI play, or that SIs would benefit. I can totally see bold operators that are going to kind of work their way up the food chain tapping into this. I mean, David, come on. I mean, you're a perfect example of a business. You're part of a business group within Verizon that's all about how do we reach out and become more substantial to our vertical enterprise customers? How do we verticalize our stuff? So, if you think about what Huawei's doing, they're doing this huge campaign on 5G, what they call 5G to B. Actually, my paper is coming out today. I attended their conference. And, you got to learn from these guys. As much as, they're maligned for all the different reasons that they're being maligned for, it doesn't mean that they aren't doing smart stuff. They're incredibly smart people. And the Chinese carriers are brilliant and very grounded and practical. You guys should be looking at the stuff coming, like what Rob's doing and thinking through, okay, how do we do some stuff that really changes the game?
I mean, now. Like, so this software, you're right. Version 1 or first use case is globally accessible system that I'm hosting in a hyperscale across multiple hyperscale clouds to ensure availability. But scenario 2 could be mobile operator, Verizon or otherwise, says we have built IoT networks, LTE, NB, whatever, and we want to monetize those networks. We will host this because it's just software in containers. You can host it in your data centers. You could push this out to your edge. This could be a MEC offering for a mobile operator to provide to your IoT subscribers specifically. No reason why it can't do that.
Oh, yeah.
And then do a rev share.
Right.
Do a rev share.
Now you got my attention.
Yeah. No, but see, this is how operators need to think, because it's not, there is a competition between SIs and the operators. But the thing is that if the operators don't feel like they want to compete, they're never going to do what we're talking about, right?
It's not only competition. It's like what sounds relevant. So in the context of the connectivity journey, there's relevance to a telco. People go of course you're doing this. Versus saying a fancy word like quantum-based AI, and then they're like, wait. Like, I've heard of that, but why are you saying that? It's strange. But the concept of like, no, I've got this SDK that does the management, the authentication, the security, and it is hosted on my MEC at the edge of my radio access network to enable any device to any platform. People go like, oh yeah, I get it. Let's buy some. Let's roll.
But keep in mind and correct me if I'm wrong, Rob is not thinking about offering a verticalized solution. This is a horizontal.
No, this is horizontal. This is device all the way to a platform.
Right. And so from an operator's perspective, it should be an enablement platform that gives them that extra layer that they need to go upstream.
Yeah.
Or downstream, whatever you want to call it.
You're right. If it's Verizon and you've created these IoT networks, you made a huge investment in them. And you're working with module OEMs and other device OEMs already as part of your go-to-market. This is just another value add. You can say, hey, if you do this, we're going to make it easy for you guys to connect. We're going to make it easy. You can connect to the Verizon IoT platform, but hey, you can connect to these other ones if that's what you want. And and the other value add is we're going to give you a security product as well. Because that's what's really hiding inside this thing is this growing security product, which is going to be critical as we move forward.
And here's the funny thing. Somebody messaged me. It's like, oh, no, it's Heinrich. He goes, 5G is not for you. It's for industry, right? And then smiley face. I was like, I thought that was now I think about it and go, yeah, you're right. And so why are all the carriers sitting there making a big deal out of consumers when they can barely deliver 5G with the level of quality that's on par with existing LTE? Why don't you start banking on the enterprise and industrial? And so, as you evolve your business, if there's even an intent to, and I'm becoming increasingly convinced that there are a lot of operators out there who just want to manage the network, and because honestly, that is tough enough, right? It's a huge investment just for the connectivity piece. Forget about all the edge stuff. Edge stuff is like they're going, oh, okay, but how are we going to make money on this stuff? Everyone says we're going to make a shit ton of money, but it's not going to be as easy as everyone thinks it is. And, but things like this are right there. They're valuable for the the industrial play, and it's not like the SIs are really good at this stuff. Think about where SIs are coming from. They're coming from BSS at best, and omni-channel stuff for the telco. You go below that, there's a handful of Indian SIs that are really good at this. Well, they're good at this stuff. I won't say really good, but they're good at this stuff. They do it, I guess, is the best way of putting it.
When I think about the SI, a lot of times I think of SI as one of the best channels, let's say, to the enterprise customer. If I look at a pie chart around IoT and I see who's making all the money, SIs are making a lot of the money, right? Billable hours.
Right.
But it doesn't just have to be a traditional SI. Many, not all, many mobile operators also have a business component to their company, and that can look kind of like an SI, doesn't it? Yeah. Those folks could also, in fact, those folks could be at the tip of the spear of this because they know about this space more than a traditional SI that's normal, just generic enterprise stuff, right? And so a lot of mobile operators don't know how to do this. Most of them are consumer based. They know how to sell iPhones. Yeah. And they have no idea how to do it. But the ones who know how to deal with enterprises and industrial, or are also pushing the envelope with the new private networks, private LTE, private 5G, they could be spearheading a lot of this.
We call them professional services.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
And the ones that are doing it the right way show this SI-like expertise out of the gate, but in-house. And if the customer wishes or necessitates a domain expert from a official, SI, the hooks are already there, so that this professional service SI acting resources can come in with an SI to spearhead a project, and everybody wins.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Hey guys, wow, this is a really long episode.
I think
this is like a Joe Rogan podcast going for hours, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. By the way, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed today because I had a personal trainer, and he beat up my ass, man. It was like horrible. And I barely did anything. I did a couple of squats with a 25-pound dumbbell, and I feel like I got hit by a Mack truck.
It gets better. It gets better with practice.
Yeah. Well, I was hoping that you're going to say it gets better with age.
No, in my personal experience, age is the reason to actually do a lot of stretching exercises.
Oh, yeah.
And that gets better, but it doesn't get better with age. The knees are the knees, man.
No, but to our audience, if you made it this far, holy wow, you made it. Right? Thanks for joining us. And remember to squash that like button, subscribe, share with all your friends and family, your dog, your cat. And we will see you next week. Remember, www.iotcoffeetalk.com.
And I just want to say thank you to both of you guys, to Leonard and David, for holding my feet to the fire and listening to me. And I know that's a lot to unpack, and it'll probably take some time to let it sink in. But it's
dude,
it's good to
we don't peddle bullshit here. That's those other people's podcasts.
You know how much money I get paid for doing this kind of stuff for companies so they don't screw up? This is like golden stuff. There's a lot, I think, that the listeners can learn out of this if they go back, rewind, listen to this. No, this is like friggin' awesome. Yeah, and you shared so many great things. There's a lot of stuff in this episode, I know, because I was listening to you just going, holy crap, you're like hitting all the critical pain points that we have today, but then also talking about solutions. And I mean, that's a tremendous gift to the audience, we should have 5 gazillion viewers and subscribers, with just this episode, I think. And, David's killer questions, man.
It's good.
Writing shit down. It's
can't throw softballs. And you know who's not going to build this technology?
Who?
The big cloud IoT players. And you know why? Because they're not going to disrupt themselves. This goes against their own interests. This allows their customers to leave them. Right.
Yeah, the multi-cloud stuff.
Yeah, and so it's not in their interest to try to build a competitive solution to this.
That's why, David, you need to go and talk to your bosses about not giving this game away to the cloud players. I know that you guys like to play with them a lot, but you know what? They're not always your friends, and there's an opportunity.
Yeah, this is an opportunity for operators to stand up and say, "We got this."
If you guys don't do it, then you know what? Guess what? Huawei and the Chinese operators will export this. They will do it first. Think about that.
Yeah, well, I honestly, I can't say that we're. I mean, the public info now, but we had that public MEC with AWS.
Yeah,
that's now also available in private and Microsoft. So we are effectively being an integrated part of that marketplace and that ecosystem of the cloud players, while still staying faithful to what we do very well. So stay tuned. There's a couple of things cooking and brewing, but we're not. I think we're. And again, I want to say this right, because I don't plug work stuff, but we're doing it in a way that stays true to our vision and mission and the core of what we're known to do, instead of acting like something that we aren't. We aren't a hyperscaler, right? So we're just doing it in a way that's core and true to what we are.
So my challenge to your question to you is, why not? Why aren't you? In some
I'll tell you once you stop recording.
As Russell Wilson would say, why not us?
Yeah, you can be anything you want to be.
Yep, you just have to decide.
Anyway.
All right,
guys.